What is up? So glad you could join us. It is the Draft Show. He's Scott Bischoff. Make sure you follow him on Twitter at Bischoff_Scott. Did I get that right?
You did.
Okay.
Well done.
I'm just Sean. But it's a pleasure to be with you once again. Today is a day that, Scott, it may not be sexy, but it's so important.
Well, I don't understand the whole lack of sexy
Because you know what
stuff.
it is. I want to talk about receivers. I want to talk
We
about
did that last week.
How many get my 60 goals?
I got to get
Larry
my
Robinson.
60 goals.
No, but here, can we start here before we start talking about where guys are in the draft? Let's start here. What do the Lions have at their disposal right now on the offensive line? I think there are two undoubtedly two knowns, and I'm very happy with both those knowns in Taylor Decker and Frank Ragnow, especially since they decided to play Frank Ragnow at his regular position. But then, Scott, there are also some pieces that you even made a point to say one of them you think is pretty close to being a known.
Jonah Jackson looks like a pretty solid player. Does he have to be a Pro Bowl guard to be a solid player? No. No. But that's kind of the point about the guard position, is that you don't need to go after it with, like, first-round resources. You don't, because you can find guys like Jonah Jackson in the middle of the draft, and he played really well as a rookie, and he looks like a viable option for them going forward. So for them, I think that it's the two knowns, and then having him ascend to a point where he becomes a known at the left guard position. So what happens on the right side of the line? That's kind of where we are, and it's not even speculation. It's the strongest part of their team. It just is, the offensive line, which is, hey, guess what? That's not a bad thing.
That's not a bad starting point.
It's a really good thing. And just like I think the secondary is the strongest part of their defense, it's also the most difficult part to build. You know what I mean? So you've put in Taylor Decker was a first-round pick. Ragnow was a first-round pick. Those guys have hit. It's good. But now you got to fill out. You need a right tackle, because what they have going forward is some unknowns. Vaitai is an unknown. Is he going to play tackle, or is he going to play guard? I think their commentary of recent days is they understand that he's more likely a guard than a tackle. Who plays right tackle for you? I mean, Joe Dahl is a bit of a down the depth chart kind of a guy, but I think he can play guard for you. Crosby he can play for you, but is he a high-end tackle, or is there uncertainty with him on a week-to-week basis? I think that you're bringing in some uncertainty. So the right tackle position is something that they need to address, and it would be, in a perfect world, if you could come away from this draft with a right tackle of the future, and in order to do that, you have to do that pretty early. And I don't mean 7th overall early, although there is a player at 7 that you should run to the podium for. But in round 2, there could be options that you could pencil in and say, all right, this is a player who we think can be a reliable tackle, and then it's who plays between Ragnow and that tackle at right guard, and that's how you move going forward. And that's why I think it's an important decision that they're going to have to make. It's not something that they can just throw resources at in the 5th or 6th round and hope it works, right? You need to figure out that right tackle position. But having said that, they're in a position where they're playing the long game, and there's a lot of time between now and when they think they're going to be competitive. And there are some young players in this class where you could say, yeah, he can play right tackle right tackle for 1 or 2 years or in that range, and then maybe you move him over to the left side and kind of see how that plays out. There are young players in this class, like Jalen Mayfield's 20 years old. Penny Sewell is 19 or 20 years old. It's crazy to think about.
And you brought up a point, and this is something that I think sometimes people don't think about. You get that player to their first contract, through their first contract, that second contract, you're talking about a guy who's 25 years old.
Yeah. Hey, we'd like to sign you to a long-term deal, and you're 25, and this works. This is cool. As opposed to maybe a guy who's 23 coming in as a rookie, and he's 28 signing a second deal, and then you're bringing in the uncertainty of age and breaking down and that kind of stuff. But, the right tackle position is a position where I think it's under the radar for what the Lions, or for where they are, and I think it would confuse people that, wait a minute, you're saying the strength of their team is their offensive line, and then you're going to go out in the first round and hit the offensive line again. So there's a little bit of confusion about that. Like, why would you do that if that's the strength of your team? You need to invest in resources elsewhere to build up everything. But there's a timing thing associated with this, and one of the ways that you can make Jared Goff an effective quarterback is to keep him protected. And if you can do that over the next couple of years, we don't know what we're going to get out of him, but I can tell you that if 2 years from now you're bringing in a rookie quarterback, and you tell him and you show him that, all right, we have a very solid offensive line, and that's going to be the strength of our team going forward, and you just kind of have to fill in behind them. It's much better to put a younger quarterback behind an offensive line that's solid than it is just throw him to the wolves and, hey, grip it and rip it. Good luck, right? So I think that the right tackle position is something we do need to talk about.
Well, what's interesting about this is, the last couple of weeks, if you've joined us, we've talked about quarterbacks, and it's funny because I think there are at least 3 quarterbacks. Some might make the argument 4 quarterbacks kind of grouped together. Sure, is there a number one? Yes, Trevor Lawrence is number one.
Balderdash.
But there's a group of 3 after that.
Yeah.
And the same thing like we talked about with wide receivers. There's a group of 3, 2 from Alabama, 1 from LSU, that everybody is talking about. I think you know where I'm going with this. When we're talking line right now, there's one guy. And then there's everybody else.
Yes, but the caveat there is there are a few players in that range where you're going to have some teams really like a player, and they're going to put him up with Sewell, Rashawn Slater from Northwestern, and then some teams are just going to dismiss him entirely because there are length issues, there are size issues. Like, some teams kind of do the whole, you must have 34-inch arms, you must be 6'5 plus to play tackle for us. Slater is not going to, Rashawn Slater from Northwestern, he's not going to fit that prototype. He's not going to fit in there. Some teams are going to have him as a highly graded tackle, though, because of the way he moves his feet and how athletic he is. And this is a discussion we'll have today. There's a synergy that goes in with arm length, and you can't just say I need 34+ inch arms or we can't play tackle. Well, if a guy has 34+ inch arms but doesn't move his feet well, I don't know how effective or what arm length really does for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they kind of work together, but Rashawn Slater is a player who some teams I think will have in the mix rated just as high as Sewell. I do. Just because of his ability to move his feet.
Sure.
And to be a player who, and this is not necessarily the flaw in the thinking, but this is where some of this does go. He's safer because there's an understanding that if he doesn't work at tackle, he will be a high level guard. So the closer he gets to the ball, the more his ceiling expands.
Okay.
Right? So,
yeah.
But there's risk in playing him as a tackle. It's just that if you play him as a guard, you're going to get high level play. If you play him as a center, you're going to get, rare play. It's just, are you taking that guy in the top 5? And I could see the Bengals looking at this scenario, and we took Jonah Williams 2 years ago. He's going to play left tackle for us. We really shouldn't be taking Penny Sewell because then we got to displace Jonah Williams. And one of those guys really shouldn't be playing right tackle. And I would say, no, you pick them both and just figure out who's going to play where, because they're both good players. It's just, so is there a scenario in which Sewell is, I guess this is a long way of going, is there a scenario in which Sewell is available at 7? And I would say super unlikely, but if he is there, transcendent player, 20 years old, 19, 20 years old, big, physical. There's so many positive things about him as a player and the things that he does well as a young player without understanding and even thinking about what he can grow into.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So by all accounts, incredible in the locker room. Great teammate. Everything that you could possibly want. And then you look at the on the field stuff, and he does things as a 330 plus pound guy and 6'6" in that range. And you never know, because teams kind of, we don't know what his size is going to be until he measures. But just, how light he is on his feet for a really big football player, and the things he can do at the second level, and the ability he gives for your offense to do things, because he's got heavy hands, and it's one of those things where he'll come off the line of scrimmage and jolt a defender backwards and then leave that guy because he's already out of the play and get up to the second level and make a block and break down in space and take the right angle on a second level defender. And it's just like, it's crazy to watch. Is a 330 plus pound guy. I mean, he's rare in the way he moves for a guy as big as he is. Now you're going to hear some are going to talk about him not using his hands so much. And I think that's a component of this. When he does, he wrecks people. I mean, just wrecks them. But he doesn't do it all the time. He kind of holds his technique and will just wall guys off. But when you see somebody wreck somebody with your hands, you want to see it again. I want to see you do that again. But he doesn't need to do it all the time, right? It's more that he's very good technically, and he's got great feet. He's really light on his feet, and he can I think there's versatility with him where you can play. You can run outside zone, you can run inside zone. He's big enough you can run power behind him. He's really good blocking down. They will allow him to reach like the Mike linebacker from the left tackle position on runs away from him, which is crazy to think about that. So you're a Mike linebacker lined up over the center or even in the opposite A-gap, and they ask him to cut him off on a run play away from him, and he can do it. Right? So, I mean, it's just there's the athleticism and on display is just crazy with him.
Can I throw this at you, though?
Yes.
Is it really as crazy? Now, for the record, let me say it first. I don't think he'll be there at 7.
I don't think he will either.
All right, but let's play a game of pretend. Is it really that crazy to think he won't be? Because if you believe that 3 quarterbacks are going to go, and the possibility of 1 or 2 wide receivers are going to go,
maybe Kyle Pitts,
as you were talking, is it really that crazy? Now again, when the draft comes, do I think he'll be on the board? I don't. But is it that far-fetched to think that he might be there?
It's not far-fetched, but I think that in order for him to be there, there will have to have been multiple trades for teams in front of them, because it does. Like if Miami can't trade out, he's kind of a natural player to go there. I mean,
sure.
It's almost a mistake for a team like Miami just to pass him up.
Yeah.
And then you would think, well, why did Cincinnati pass on him? So the only way I think that he is there is if there's a bunch of, nonsense that happens in front of them.
Yeah.
And Carson Wentz is a part of this. The more quarterback, I mean, if you want Penny Sewell as a Lions fan, the more quarterbacks that go in the top 6, the better. It just is. But
3 going, I'm telling you.
It'd be great if that were the case. But I still could see even a scenario where Philly decides we traded Carson Wentz, but we're going to take Penny Sewell. Cincinnati really should be taking him. They really should. I mean, you drafted Joe Burrow, and you really need an offensive tackle like Penny Sewell. So Penny Sewell is, I think, one of the better tackles to enter the NFL in a long time. Tristan Wirfs was awesome this year as a player, but I would say that as good as a prospect as he was, I think Sewell's got more ceiling, more upside than Wirfs, which is, I know it sounds crazy because he's a Pro Bowl player as a rookie, and he was awesome this year. He really was.
Yeah.
But, again, we're talking about Penny Sewell at Oregon versus Tristan Wirfs at Iowa. Tristan Wirfs is a really good player, but Sewell's got, I think, a level of – he can unlock a level of play that's maybe can expand past where Wirfs is. It's probably a little hyperbole for some out there, but, I mean, as a prospect, he's – man. I mean, really, it's just, just watching him as a 330-plus pound guy move the way he does and light on his feet and his pass set and how really technically savvy he already is, and then thinking about him as a 20-year-old, entering the NFL as a 20-year-old, it's just it's rare.
Dude, I get it.
He's a rare guy.
I get it.
He is a rare guy, and then kind of looking past him, I think there's a conversation to be had about what the Super Bowl means with how Kansas City looked without their offensive tackles and with what Tampa Bay was to do with pressure. And I think you're going to see, and there's always a reactionary process behind this. You're going to see teams decide that we must take tackle because it's that important to our offenses, and teams taking edge players because it's that important to what they can do against offenses. So there's a group of offensive tackles. There's a big group of offensive tackles in this class that I think will go in the first round and likely before the Lions pick in the second round. And in that group are players who might be guys that have to transition inside to play guard in the NFL. But they're going to get, you're going to try them at tackle first. So Rashawn Slater is one of those guys. Elijah Vera Tucker from USC is another one. These guys are like 6'3" and 300 pounds, so they're undersized, but they're really athletic players. And you need to try them on the edge of your offensive line and let them fail there before you kick them inside. But I think they're more inside type players than they are tackles. That doesn't mean that Slater can't play tackle, because I think he can. It's just, the margin for success for him, the margin for error for him is super small because of the length issues.
Sure.
So, but he moves his feet so well, and he's such a finished, high, technically savvy player that I think he's one of the guys who could make this happen. And then there's Jalen Mayfield from Michigan, and Christian Darrisaw from Virginia Tech, who there's some stuff with his game, with some footwork stuff where it's like, it's not great. But they run an offense that there's not a lot of true traditional pass sets to see from him, where there's a lot of it's not a pro style offense where you're asking him to execute pass sets all the time. When he does do it, his footwork is bad, and as a big player who is very athletic and can move, you'd want to see some of that cleaned up. But it's more like to get into the technical side of things, it's in your pass set. He plays left tackle. You really need to gain some depth with your first step, which is off your right foot. And in order to get the depth, you need to move laterally and vertically, right? Almost like at a 45-degree angle. And what he does with his right foot is he just kind of sets it there. And now he's behind a touch because he didn't get enough lateral or vertical depth with his first step and his push step. So he's underpowered, plus now he's chasing, if it's speed, around the corner. And those are things where, as a player coming in, it really needs to be fixed. It needs to be cleaned up. He's very athletic. He's got power. He does all those things. But it's, you need to clean up that aspect of it, or he's going to get torched on the, turn in the corner with speed, because he will turn and chase because he doesn't gain enough lateral or vertical movement with his first step, which is really how everything goes. It's that first movement sets everything up. So
sure.
There's not a lot of foundation behind his pass sets, but as a run blocker, he's effective. He's effective. Tevin Jenkins from Oklahoma State is a very, very powerful player. He's fun to watch. I think he'll be a bottom of the first round type, mid to bottom. His desire is to embarrass players. You can see it. He really wants to.
Come on.
Yeah, his desire is to physically punish defenders.
Let's go.
And if you watch him against Texas, against Joseph Ossai, he's a good pass rusher. There are moments on that film where you think, wow, like his hands are so heavy and he's powerful and physical and nasty, and his demeanor is, it's almost like he's big tough guy, and it's on display.
Yeah.
And you love that. You love to see that. And then we get into a scenario where there's some guys who I think this is the wheelhouse for the Lions are where they'll be in round 2. And it's Liam Eichenberg from Notre Dame, who is a senior, an older player, but he's played for a long time at Notre Dame, and he's a polished player coming out of Notre Dame. And I think it's fair to compare him to Mike McGlinchey. And, right tackle of the future for a little while, a stable player, a guy who's kind of, I don't want to say finished, but you kind of know what you're getting with him. And he's got enough length and movement skills. He's not a great athlete, but he's good enough he can play at a high level for you. Sam Cosmi from Texas, there are some things about him as a player that I don't love, but I can understand where they would think right tackle for us. And, a physical guy, a guy who's in a phone booth is a very aggressive player and a mauler type, but there's some footwork stuff and there's some aggressive aggression stuff with him. He's overly aggressive, where there are moments where, anytime you're bending at the waist or reaching or lunging as an offensive tackle, it's potentially problematic, because if you miss with your hands, you're off balance.
Yeah.
And then you're getting beat one way or the other. You're getting beat. and he's really aggressive. And let's be a little more patient and fire your hands when somebody gets near you enough where you can make that work. So it's Eichenberg and Cosme, and then Alex Leatherwood from Alabama is an intriguing player. It's tough because those guys at Alabama are finished coming into the NFL. They are pretty much at their peak because of the coaching they're getting. He's very proficient in his and technical in his movements, but he's limited in his movement ability. So you're looking at a player who's really not going to – I don't think there's a lot of ceiling for him to get to. But there are moments where speed gives him problems. And when he knows, he's oversetting, and that kind of opens the door for somebody to come back inside.
Sure.
So you know what you're getting with him because I think he's very polished as a player. An underrated guy who I think would be really interesting for them, but he fits into the players with shorter arms and is undersized. It's crazy. Is Dylan Radunz from North Dakota State. And he's just not a player who gives up many pressures. He's just not, right? And he's an effective player. The big knock on him or the questions with him are going to be competition and length. And at the Senior Bowl, he looked pretty good. I mean, he did look good against the best seniors in this class. It's just a question of do you buy into his film and what he looks like as a football player? And I think there's a reason you can. But in round 2, he'd be a nice option to play tackle. I mean, is he a perfect size player? No. But we're talking round 2, and we're talking about being able to put somebody out there who is reliable, and he is as a pass protector. He is. Where Leatherwood, I'm not sure. I think is super reliable as a pass protector. I think he might have to go inside.
You make me laugh whenever you bring that up because I know you and I are cut from the same cloth. It is fascinating to me how many people make their judgment on round 1, day 1 of the draft, and they are absolutely sure because the Lions didn't get who they wanted in the first round.
Yeah. There are more rounds than one.
The Lions blew that draft, and there's no way they can salvage that draft. And it's like, Scott, I really do think it's part and parcel with the Lions' lack of success around here. These are money rounds, man.
Yeah.
These are second, third, fourth, fifth. You mentioned Dahl. Dahl's been here. What, 2016? Wasn't he Quinn's 2016 draft?
Pick, yeah.
5th round pick.
Yeah.
And again, listen.
Swing tackle.
Yeah. Good. That's what you want. You want to get a guy that has some versatility, can be here for a few years. That's the type of stuff I'm talking about.
So there's a reason why I brought up the first round guys, because if we're looking at a scenario in which the Lions are moving away from pick 7 and getting future capital, let's say it's down to pick 19, as Dane Brugler was. Yeah. So at pick 19, you'd be looking at some of these. You'd be looking at Tevin Jenkins thinking, I like him as my right tackle. I really do. I think that fits for us. I think he's physical enough, and he's phone booth mauler enough where he fits what we want to do going forward. Christian Darrisaw, again, there's some. I just urge people to look at the feet and look at the first step in his kick slide. Jalen Mayfield. He's 20 years old, so you're looking at a young player, but he's a big guy. To me, there are moments where he looks underpowered and he looks like he hasn't put it all together at Michigan. But some of the Michigan guys in the past few seasons have come out and they have panned out.
Sure.
They look all right. I could see a scenario where Elijah Vera Tucker is a player they would want in the middle to late part of round 1, just because of his movement ability and his ability to, his athletic skills and the technical stuff with him and how under control he plays. But then there's is he a tackle, is he a guard kind of thing. So in a scenario where they're moving out of 7, I think you're looking at, the guys who you could pencil in as guys who would play right tackle with almost certainty that they're going to play right tackle. And that's Darrisaw and Tevin Jenkins, maybe Jalen Mayfield, although some are thinking he may be a guard. He's played right tackle at Michigan, and again, he's 20 years old, so there's some time for him to develop. The clear winner of this class is Penny Sewell, but there's going to be options, and it's just because the Lions look like the strength of their team is on their offensive line, I don't think by any means we should take it out of the equation. They may
Heck
take
no.
one. You need one.
Yeah,
you need a right tackle.
absolutely.
And the nice thing about a player like Mayfield or Sewell is that these guys are 20 years old. So, like you mentioned, signing him to their second deal as a 25-year-old, 5 years from now, with the ability to transition and replace Taylor Decker, who at that point will be a almost 10-year vet.
Sure.
Kind of, it makes some sense.
It flies by. Gosh,
it really does.
Damn,
it really does.
It's incredible.
But there are 11 tackles in this class who I think will be taken within the first 2 to 3 rounds. We haven't mentioned James Hudson. I think he's more of an inside player than an outside player. He's really raw, but again, a player who could really move for his size. So, and just like last week we mentioned the wide receiver run that there will be with like the gadget types. There's a slew of tackles who might have to kick inside to play guard at the NFL level. It's Rashawn Slater, Elijah Vera Tucker, Jalen Mayfield might be one of those guys. James Hudson, Dylan Radunz, and Alex Leatherwood. Those guys are all tackles who should get the opportunity to play tackle but might have to kick inside. And I'm not sure that spending first-round capital on a player who might have to play guard for you makes a ton of sense. But some of these guys do bring some certainty. Like, you can see the certainty of a team thinking we need to hit on this first pick we make. But it's almost I don't want to say inconceivable because I don't think you're taking a guard in round 1. But that's going to be the discussion: is how certain are you on these prospects going forward? What does the film sell you on? Right? Like, if you know a guy's going to be a guard, I don't know that the Lions would be looking at them in round 1. But a guy like Tevin Jenkins in the mid to late part of round 1,
you never know. It's especially Scott. I think one of we have about 5 minutes left, pal. One of the things that you hit on was the uncertainty about this and COVID and everything. That could mean that you're seeing teams go like this all over the place. I mean, there could be a lot of movement even before 7.
That's why I'm bringing up the move inside the guard thing, because if you know that a player like Rashawn Slater can be a high-level guard for you, in this particular draft, he might be more valuable than swinging for the fences on a player who's going to play tackle and might struggle going inside.
Sure.
So you can see the divergent lines of thought behind it's a COVID year with super huge amount of unknown, but on film this guy looks like he could play at a high level for us somewhere, and we value that he could play somewhere. We don't necessarily value that he has to play tackle or he fails. So it's sort of along that line of thinking. Is some teams are gonna be more interested in the certainty of he's going to play somewhere for us. Some teams are going to swing for the fences.
Is there a comp with Sewell? Because, I mean, again, I think anybody that follows this guy, before the season started, people were saying he was going to be the first guy to go. He was going to be a high pick, all that. Is there a comp that comes to mind? I hate to put you on the spot. I hope you can forgive me.
I don't know that the comp game is tough. He's big. He's got enough arm length. He moves at a rare level. The comp game is tough for him because you would say you'd want to. I think he's the best tackle to come out in a little while. But having said that, do I expect him to be a Pro Bowl starting tackle in year 1? No. So then, how do I justify it or reconcile that Tristan Wirfs did what he did?
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So
no, I get what you're saying.
So the comp thing is tough, but he is an elite, rare prospect, the likes of which I don't think we've seen in a while, and he's young, and there's room for him to grow beyond what he already is.
Just makes it go like that.
So he's already kind of an elite prospect, and there's the opportunity for him to grow past that. Again, he opted out this year. He's 6'6" and 330 plus pounds with long arms and rare movement stuff. He's rare. That's the best I can tell you. I don't want to say he's Orlando Pace or Jonathan. I don't want. It's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. But from a prospect standpoint, he is, to me, he's the best tackle prospect in a while to enter the NFL. Mm. And I think he would be coveted, but we'll see.
All right, let me look at my watch. We got about 3 minutes. Anything you want to get out in the last 3 minutes, pal?
Can we talk about Kyle Pitts for 3 minutes?
If you want to talk
Okay,
about
so Kyle Pitts, we talked about him evaluating him as a receiver. So, okay, Kyle Pitts is like a Lamborghini, right? So if you're going to the store to buy a Lamborghini, like if you're going to the Lamborghini store and you're buying
Love that
one
store. Shop there. I'm Shawn
Yeah,
Baligian
you are
for the
there all the time?
Lamborghini store.
yeah, is that a Canadian store?
Yeah, absolutely.
So playing him as a blocker is almost like taking off the rear bumper and firing a trailer hitch on that thing and having him pull up trees.
Yeah.
Like tree roots with a Lamborghini. Why would you do that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You could, if you want to do that, draft a pickup in round 5. But that's the point, is that he is a Lamborghini in this class. So don't ask him to do things that just are silly to your offense.
Couldn't agree more.
So that's Kyle Pitts. What are your thoughts on Kyle Pitts?
How many pits are in a pair would be the
2.
first thing that I would throw at. You know damn well there's much more than 2 pits in a pair. Shout out to our mutual friend Johnny Brennan while we're at it. I hope this gets back to Johnny. Maybe you could even send Johnny this clip.
Oh, such a talent.
Does he know the impact he's made on people's lives like yours and mine?
hope.
Do you think he knows?
So I talked to him for a while, and it was likely this tells you how sad my existence is.
Jerky boys.
It's a highlight of my life. Can you imagine somebody? I'm 50 years old and I have children. I don't want to say anymore.
He did a Jerky Boys thing for me and my son. Are you
I
kidding
made
me?
that
That's
happen.
just,
That
I
was
know you did, and I
the cab
appreciate
ride.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a true story.
And he did one for me, and it's filthy.
I did Jerky Boys to the cab driver the entire trip, and it was fun. No,
he
you know
understands. He gets it.
It's funny talking to Joik, because Joik and I have had this conversation, and like he gets Pettigrew is his teammate, right?
Yeah.
So he likes Pettigrew. And I said, I like Pettigrew as well. I don't like him at 20th overall. I don't,
Do you like Mike Evans? Because Kyle Pitts is on the Mike Evans spectrum.
And so you understand what I'm saying. I said, you can get a player very comparable to a guy like Pettigrew later on in the draft.
Yeah.
And it was funny because Joik said, he didn't use Pettigrew as an example. He goes, we had a couple guys in camp where, quite frankly, guys on the offense are going, he's every bit as good as our starter. This guy that we just
Big
picked
Bob
up.
Tonyan?
Yeah, this guy that's one of the. He goes, he's just as good as everybody that we have on this roster.
Yeah,
and so that's where it's at. So no, I think you're right, and I think people are going to start seeing that. You're going to start to see his name. It's already there, but I think you're going to hear it more and more.
Well, I
and
think
more
there's an element that he is on the Mike Evans, Plaxico Burress, low-end Julio
That's
Jones
insane.
Types.
Isn't
He's
that
that
insane?
type of player.
It's insane.
So why would you ever not utilize him as a passing game weapon? I don't know. I don't get it.
It almost goes back to the Millen regime.
There are 4 receivers in this elite group, and not 3.
We want to be this sleek offensive machine, and we have parts for a tank. Never going to work. Never going to work. All right, we got to get out of here. Thank you, pal. Always a pleasure. Make sure you check him out. His fine work. He does a lot of stuff. Always breaking things down. He's always great answering questions as well. I give him total props for that. We want to thank my man Fish. Fish does a fantastic job. Does a little bit of everything here. Stay tuned for the Fish Stick podcast. It's coming out soon. I'm going to make it come out soon, Fish. For Scott Bischoff and Fish, I'm Shawn Baligian. Until next week. Later.